Hello everyone, and welcome to my video titled Using Evidence-Based Strategies at Home. In this video, we will be discussing two strategies that parents can easily implement to support their child's developing reading skills. But first, my name is Alyssa Lupica, and I currently work in a dual position as a preschool general education teacher and intervention specialist in an integrated classroom. This position has provided me with valuable experience and knowledge as I help to prepare several of my preschoolers for kindergarten. Ari is the student whom I have been tutoring. She has attended the public preschool where I work for the past 2 years and is getting ready to begin kindergarten in a few weeks. And in our tutoring sessions, we have been working on phonemic awareness by practicing skills like blending and segmenting phonemes. To understand what this really means, let's define what a phoneme is. A phoneme is the smallest unit of sound within a word. So if we take the word cat and break it down by the sounds that we hear, we get k, a, t. The word the, however, has two phonemes, th, So although we use 3 letters to spell the word the, we only hear 2 phonemes. When we practice phonemic awareness, we are not looking at any written language or text. We are only listening to words and the individual sounds we hear. So we know what a phoneme is now. So phonemic awareness refers to the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate those sounds. With Ari specifically, we are working on counting the number of phonemes we hear in a word and identifying beginning, middle, and ending sounds. When practicing this skill, you can also add, delete, or change phonemes to make new words. But remember, when practicing phonemic awareness, students are intensely and meaningfully listening to spoken words and sounds. We're not asking the child to attend to any written form of text right now. And you can see here on the screen the progression of skills with phonemic awareness. We begin with phoneme identification, so identifying the individual sounds we hear in words, and then blending and segmenting those sounds together. And then we work on kind of manipulating the sounds and adding, deleting sounds, and then substituting them for different sounds within the words to make new ones. And I'll often refer to these lessons as listening games to make it child-friendly and engaging. As Ari's phonemic awareness develops and becomes stronger, she is able to apply her knowledge of those sound-symbol relationships to decode simple words. She already has a great background knowledge of the letters that make up our alphabet and their corresponding sounds. So the other skill that we've been working on is decoding. Decoding is simply the process of putting this knowledge to the test to sound out and read words. Based on her age and current knowledge base, we are specifically focusing on decoding consonant, vowel, consonant words, or CVC words. These are short, simple words like cat, mat, pan, or van. Some other phonics skills that students will learn to decode as they become more proficient are long vowel patterns where the vowel actually says its name. Silent E and vowel teams are commonly taught with this skill. Consonant digraphs are another phonics pattern where 2 consonants represent one unique sound, like ch is represented by CH, and SH will say sh. Consonant blends is another example where 2 consonants are next to each other in a word and you are able to hear both sounds represented in the word. And finally, diphthongs, which can be described as gliding vowels, and they make a really unique sound, like OI is oi in the word coin, and OU is ow in the word owd, loud. So those are some other examples. And altogether, our sessions have included phonemic awareness practice, a review of previously learned skills, explicit instruction of a new skill, and opportunities to practice that skill with a decodable text or a game, and then progress monitoring to check for understanding. That's typically the structure of all of our tutoring sessions. And with each session, I try and implement evidence-based strategies that align with the science of reading research. Today, we are going to be discussing 2 of those evidence-based strategies that you can also implement at home to support your child's reading. The first one we will talk about is the use of sound boxes, or you might also hear them being called Elkonin boxes. This is a very simple strategy to implement because literally all you need are boxes on a page. There are several places online where you can find free versions of them, or you can also just make your own in a Word document, or even just draw them on paper. Sound boxes can be used to support both phonemic awareness and decoding. When we use them to practice phonemic awareness, your child can actually place counters or little manipulatives to place in the boxes as they identify the individual sounds. I've even used pennies for this when doing it with Ari. So if we take the word mop, we can tap, chop, or stretch the sounds and place a counter into each individual box to represent those sounds. Like this. M, a, p. Mop. The child has to listen intensely to identify how many sounds there are and separate them into the boxes. This process is called segmenting because the child is segmenting or separating the sounds, and we can then practice blending them together to say m, a, p, mop. One helpful tip when doing this for a child like Ari, who's just beginning to read, is to use what we call continuous sounds. So these are the sounds that we can extend and really stretch out when we say them, like the letters M and N, M, A, N, man. Or F is another great one. Like if we take the word fin, we can really stretch those sounds out. F, in, fin. V, R, Z, L, and S are other examples of this. When we make these sounds, we can really extend and stretch them, which can make it easier to model how to blend sounds together. Alternatively, stop sounds are not extended, like the sounds p, g, or b. Those are sounds that we consider stop sounds and can make it difficult for a child to understand blending when they are first learning how to. So feel free to use this tip if you notice that your child is continuing to struggle with this skill of blending the sounds together. We can also use sound boxes to decode or read words. So this is when we would actually write inside the boxes and do what we call mapping out the sounds. Again, each box represents a sound. So let's take the word mop. We can first model how to do this for your child by segmenting the sounds m, a, p, and writing them in the boxes. They should then be given the opportunity to practice this on their own. So you can give them a word and they can practice mapping it. As they get older and learn more complex spelling patterns, this can actually become more challenging because multiple letters can represent one sound. And phonics can get a little bit more complex, like with the word chip, for example. We can segment the sounds into ch, I, p, and represent them like this in the sound boxes. CH is what we call a digraph, and essentially what that means is when C and H are together, they make one unique sound, which is ch. That's why we place these letters together in one box. The strategy can get even more complex when we think about rule-breaking words, which are often those high-frequency words that we see in text a lot, like with the word said, for example. We can map out S and D, S and D, because those sounds are familiar to us. But it can make it pretty unpredictable when it has a middle part like this example where AI is not producing its normal sound. Phonetically, it would be an E. It's making the sound in this word. So what we do is we explain this by saying it's a rule breaker, and I like to place a heart above that spot because that's the part that we need to know by heart. However, that is the whole nother video to explain heart words and how we do those. But with this strategy, we really want to encourage decoding and prompt children to map out the sounds that they identify by writing them in the boxes. And this process of hearing the phonemes, tapping them out, mapping them, and blending really helps children to visualize these spelling patterns and understand how we can use letters and sounds to make words. There is actually a name for this strategy, and it's called orthographic mapping. This is the process of connecting spoken words into their written form to build fluency and automaticity. This strategy has been proven to support a child's reading ability by moving words into their long-term memory system. So this whole process of mapping out words helps them to decode, but also to store the spelling and meanings of words in their long-term memory. The next evidence-based strategy that we will talk about is the use of decodable text. So in order to increase a child's fluency and overall reading proficiency, they really need practice with these spelling patterns in connected text. Decodable text is a passage or emergent reader that includes intentional words that include spelling patterns that the child is familiar with. That's why they're called decodable. They are specifically linked to the phonics lessons and spelling patterns that children have been taught. So for Ari, we are tailoring her decodable text to include CVC words because that's what we're working on. That's the developmentally appropriate skill. Words like map, pig, and bed are examples of this. If you have only explicitly taught and practiced specific short vowel sounds, for example, those are the ones that should be included in the decodable text. In order for a text to be considered decodable, at least 64% of the words need to be familiar to the child and include regularly spelled words. So it's important to note that what is decodable to one child may not be decodable to another. So this is really tailored and differentiated strategy because it's specific to the child's reading skills. The use of decodable readers is beneficial for increasing their fluency because it's highly repetitive and consistent. The child gets many opportunities to practice familiar phonics patterns within a decodable text. But they're not necessarily used for increasing comprehension or vocabulary knowledge, so just keep that in mind, especially with very young students who are just beginning to read. But this is an excellent strategy overall to increase their phonics knowledge and really reinforce what has been taught to them. If we think about it, explicit phonics instruction is really great, but we need to be able to teach children how to apply that phonics knowledge in reading. The whole point is to create proficient readers, and so this is an essential part of that process. To get a better idea of what I mean by decodable text, we can compare a decodable reader to what is known as a leveled reader. These books were frequently used back in the day for guided reading, but we can see the difference here. The decodable reader only includes words and spelling patterns that the child is familiar with. We are not expecting children to read words with spelling patterns that they have never been exposed to. These are books that are designed based on phonics patterns. Over here with the leveled reader, we can see how every page is repetitive with maybe one or two words that are different. And this really doesn't teach children how to decode or sound out words. It just teaches them to memorize and rely heavily on the pictures. So let's talk about high frequency words. These are words that children will encounter often in a text in order to form sentences that make sense. They need to know a solid amount of high frequency words in order to read books. So with this example, within the decodable passage, The passage is titled Mac the Cat, and it practices short A CVC words. And we can see the sentence, Mac can nap on the lap. And I notice a few words that are high frequency. It's interesting that when we teach decoding strategies with intentionality, children can actually apply that skill to read some high frequency words too. Like the words can and on in this sentence are decodable. These words become decodable when a child is explicitly taught how to connect letters and sounds to read words. The only word in this sentence that is not 100% decodable is the word the. And when I say decodable, I'm specifically referring to a student like Ari who hasn't been exposed to like perhaps the schwa sound. So right now it would be considered undecodable for her. And as they get older and learn new phonics patterns, they will be able to decode high frequency words like the words with, must, see, or like, because these actually all follow certain spelling patterns that they will eventually be exposed to. And there are several decodable texts out there that are available for free online. You can find them in the form of books, short stories, passages, and a lot of them are actually digital. Some of my favorite places to find these decodable books are Flyleaf Publishing, Half Pint Kids, Starfall, and Reading A to Z. Phonics programs like Lexia or Really Great Reading are also great ones. So those are two evidence-based strategies that you can easily implement at home to support your child's reading skills, and both can be free options and don't take much effort to put together or implement. Thank you for watching.